No, this isn't it. Anyway, who cares? Look, this is going to be a great show. I want to talk, Carrie, about your comedy. I want to talk about what you're
Oh,
doing. You graduated. You're a filmmaker. You
I
created.
haven't graduated quite yet.
Oh,
I've got one more semester.
okay. Where do you go to? Where do you school?
I go to Fresno State University.
And you're studying what?
Digital journalism.
Digital journalism.
Yeah. Well, everything's converging to digital. So instead of, like it's just different. For example, like if you look at the New York Times now, it's multimedia. You'll see an article and you might see a video, and then you might also see, a map. I mean, it's really expanded in different ways. I mean, you still learn how to be a journalist, like how to write in the inverted, pyramid and AP
Wait.
style.
What's that mean?
There's
Remember the headlines and then the details.
Yeah. And like when you read an article, you basically want it. Some people only read the headline really because everything's so fast. But it goes to the headline, and then you go to the nut graphs. People can see exactly what it's about. So if you read a lot of articles, you'll see that it gives you all the information up front that you really need to know, and then it dwindles down into less relevant stuff.
Yeah.
Until it basically tapers off.
And what the longer articles also do is they might just midway through they'll have an enlarged version of a quote from the body of the
right.
Of the text.
Yeah.
And then you see that quote, and then you look for because it's nearby where that's cited. So you might tend to read the entire paragraph in which that quote is there.
One of the main reasons I don't like reading feature stories or even some news stories in American papers online, or basically is they take forever to get to the point. You don't know what they're writing about. Let's say the headline is water and utility prices in this California county have been cut by 50%. And you go, wow, I want to know how that happened. And so you start reading the article, and it's like, Myrna and James Mackle.
That's a bad article.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
They raised the family. And when Jim had to go into the army, and it's like, I don't fucking care. No offense. I'm glad you served. Thank you very much. But I want to get to the point. And I also feel manipulated purposefully. I don't feel manipulated, but I feel like I'm being manipulated. Because at the end of the day, look, it's all business, Terry. I really want to hear your opinion on this wild idea I have, is that it's all business. And so it's just like they used to sell popcorn when they had, one of the reasons Western movies were popular in America in the movie cinemas back in the 60s and 50s, before that, really popular. So when the desert scenes would come up, which inevitably were, they would turn off the air conditioning, and then they would sell drinks in the lobby. It was manipulated. The programming was partially used as a way to manipulate further upsales. And I think the same thing. I mean, when we were evening news, before the internet, just the evening news at 6:30, these three competing networks for our attention to find out what's important.
Walter Cronkite
and Harry Reasoner, and Tom Brokaw and Harry Reasoner. But Terry, what would be the commercials? What would be support? What would be the big sponsors? Pharmaceutical companies,
right?
That would appeal to our insecurities. Basically, do you have trouble getting a hard on? After you just seen a report about troubles in the Middle East, or anxiety meds. This was clearly a reaction to how bad the news was today. Then they'd sell you anxiety meds. I do think that journalism on the web is kind of the same thing. We just don't know.
Well,
we don't.
The problem is that right now, most people are getting their news. I think right now the leading social media platform anywhere, I think people are just getting their news in general, is TikTok.
Yeah.
which is run by
Yeah.
a China company. So
Yeah.
the irony in that. So a lot of things are changing. People aren't buying the paper anymore. I mean, they still get the paper, they still get magazines, but it's definitely moving into the digital realm, and social media does play a lot out of it. Yeah, there's a lot of things that can be clickbaity that are out there, or but there's also a lot of publications that I think are quite innovative, and it continues to grow in a positive way. It's just not exactly black and white, but digital journalism is really where it's going pretty much right now. So I decided to focus on that because at the very least, I do my own podcast, and I have my, I've been live streaming and doing all kinds of things online anyway. So at the very least, I am better at writing my own articles and things. And one of the things I learned was publicity. I took social media classes. I've taken film classes. I'm taking a screenwriting class. Like I'm learning how to write in different ways. And I also took a creative nonfiction, which I really love. So I'm working on my first essay right now. That's more like a memoir piece, but which is a genre that I really like, that does get published in, like, say, the New Yorker or even the New York Times. And these essays can be published that way. So I'm kind of looking to maybe going more into that direction. And I want to get an MFA in creative writing. That way I would be able to continue writing and things. And, but also I'm interested in maybe possibly teaching as well, or becoming a professor myself.
And do it all because they all help each other. It's like
my partner for many years. She wound up being a professor at
who's that, Brian? I was talking. I'm sorry. Who?
Yeah, no, Ruby. My ex-partner.
Oh yeah, Ruby. Yeah.
She quit the act and moved to Kentucky to get her PhD, and then came back to Southern California and got a professorship at Azusa Pacific University, which is a Christian college, but it worked out well. She hung on there for 30 years, and just retired this year.
Let me ask you.
Quit my comedy act though.
She taught writing. That's what reminded me. She taught creative writing. So
yeah. I just look to expand my possibilities of different things I could possibly do in my life.
So let me ask.
I still do like doing stand-up though. Yeah.
Well, I want to talk about that too, and we got to get to the pub quiz. But there's a question lingering in my head about something. Which I took a journalism class in high school. I mean, that's how interested I was back then, and kind of still am. And I still write and whatever, blah blah blah. Okay, but I think in creativity, there's lying involved in creativity. Always lying, yes. Right? Mm-hmm. So let me ask you about this. This is sort of the moral equivalency exam. So let's say my publisher or the managing editor or whatever asks me to do a story about buying a home in America and going through the process with the bank and finding the property. And I interview people and I investigate and I get reports. And in this piece that I'm writing, I say, well, as a matter of fact, I had the same experience when my wife and I bought a home in London in 2000. We had this because I don't want to. Because I'd rather show that I'm married. I was at the time, but we were separated, and so the home was in my name. It wasn't about my wife. But for the sake of continuity and credibility, if I threw in there and said, well, back in 2000, when my wife and I bought a home in London, is that lying? I mean, how truthful do you have to be about yourself? Because there is so much doxing and uncovering, and people, I went online, I found out Stephen Green and his wife separated in 1999. What do you mean? Nothing in this story is true.
Well, I think you would maybe have to say my ex-wife and I bought it, or or I bought it when I was living with my ex-wife or something like that. I mean, when you're doing a journalism, like if you're doing an article, you have to be honest. You want to be honest, and you should have an editor that's fact checking.
Yeah, especially since there's.
But if you're writing a memoir, or you're using something in your personal life that becomes part of a story, a book, or based on a true story, screenplay, or something like that. Of course, you're going to be able to have your own artistic license. Sure. Creative nonfiction, it's you can write in a very experimental way, but still be telling the truth about something that happened to you.
Well, you can also be telling the truth as you believe it, because when I write my blogs, I talk about stuff that I did in the past, and it's to the best of my recollection. So there could be some faulty stuff in it, but I try and make it as well as I remember it. And there's other people that were at the events that I describe, and they'll say, well, that's not how I remember it. And I just
there's also things, right? But there's also things that you and I, Rick, we write about comedy, and so I don't know if you do or not, Terry, but sometimes, but our audience is. First of all, I believe that the writer's audience is always first him or herself. You're writing so you can express it to yourself. It's crazy, and keep a journal and keep it, positioned in time. But it's also other comedians, people in the comedy business, comedy agents or managers or clubs. They want to hear about our stories. And then there's the wider public. So when you're writing a story about the business, if you're writing it strictly for the wider public, you might say, so I had to do this bringer show. And by the way, bringers are when the comedians are
booked, you have to explain it. Yeah.
Right. Except what you wouldn't do that if you were writing for an strictly industry audience. They would know what bringers are. They wouldn't, oh, come on, we know what it is. Carry on with your story.
Right. But most people, and I think that when you're writing about being a comedian and about having a comic's life, you're not just, I would think by and large, you're probably going to be writing to a larger audience. And so, whatever they don't know, you will want to add that in so they get that in its context.
Yeah, I do that in my blogs. I definitely, give a rough explanation of what the situation is, how sometimes how much we're getting paid, and how many people would be seated in the room, and how long we're supposed to do, things like that that kind of boost the story a bit, give it some something that they can visualize. And
can I just interrupt you, Rick, and just say, as a fellow comedian and a fellow writer, you're a great writer.
Oh, thank you very much.
Don't give me the awe. That's disgusting. Now I feel gay. Nothing wrong with being gay. I would like to suck a dick. Look, we got Tere, Joyce, and as we know, none of that talk right now. We're going to do our first pub quiz. We'll be right back with Comedy Dish and Pub Quiz. Pub quiz, pub quiz, pub quiz, pub quiz, pub quiz.